Rocking Chair Session. With Elisa Di Battista and Maria Teresa Barber. Hello everyone.
Hi, and welcome to RCS Rocking Chair Sessions for Volume 23.
23 and post-Irma.
Yes.
Post-Irma. And we are so happy to have Gerbi Tsesarskaia. I butchered that.
No, do it.
Tsesarskaia?
Yes.
Tsesarskaia here with us today. Who is actually in Studio 23 at the Bakehouse.
Yes, and for Session 23. So what a serendipitous event.
Serendipitous event, yeah.
Yes. And just for our listeners, being here, a Bakehouse, an artist resident, Gerbi was the first to leave and the first to come back from the storm.
The last to leave?
The last to leave and the first to come back, like the ibis.
She knows the most.
She knows the most, and she witnessed everything, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I guess
I surely did.
You did, right?
I did.
Do you want to tell us a little bit how was it your first hurricane, or did you experience already?
In the Bakehouse,
it
was definitely my first hurricane.
The first hurricane in the Bakehouse.
Otherwise, in Florida, far from it.
You had
yes.
More...
I've been in Florida since '90. So I've been through Andrew, through Wilma, and the rest in between.
Wow.
Yes.
So you have a lot of experience with hurricanes.
I guess I do.
A good amount.
I wish it could have been less, but that's all I have.
Yeah. So how was Irma for you compared to the others? Compared to Andrew and Wilma?
Irma was very mild, I think, compared to the incredible barrage of information and scare and preparedness everyone had to go through. Mm-hmm. And structures did not suffer even remotely the damage which they suffered during Wilma or Andrew. Mm-hmm. But the plant world causes me incredible pain to see the battered trees, broken trees, fallen down trees, and with this incredible dry air and not a drop of rain, which is happening right after the hurricane, I just physically feel the suffering of the plants.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it feels like they're like crying, and it feels so sad.
Exactly.
Because no one was expecting as much damage to the trees after the storm was like moving westwards and away from Miami, and to see how many trees fell. I mean, for people who are not in Miami right now, the streets are pretty much cleared, but on the side of the streets you have these huge piles.
Yeah. Well, we were on the dirty side, so I had the feeling. We didn't get hit by the eye, but we were on the whiplash side where you get the wind. So I was like, oh, the wind and the branches
And we have a tree, a huge, old, beautiful tree that has fallen in the parking lot of the Bakehouse, right? And
but very neatly.
Very neatly,
did not
majestically.
Anyone.
It was just like, and here I fall. I know, it's last little
just laid down to rest. That's it. I'm done.
Basically.
Yeah, it's so true.
Yes, it did not hurt anyone. Not a soul.
Not at all. And I mean, a lot of people were very worried about the Bakehouse too. I know we were all here packing up our studios. You know, we get rain leaks on a good day, right? On a regular day. So to prepare for a hurricane,
barely any leaks.
Barely anything happened.
Few drops here and there. It's a fortress.
Wow.
It's a beautiful, beautiful building built to last.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have an incredible fondness for this place. Mm-hmm. And it proved to be safe haven from any natural force.
So you were not worried about your artwork in the studio?
No. I didn't put a thing away.
That's awesome.
Wow.
Gerbi, you're so brave.
I didn't do anything. Just didn't.
Well, talking about your love for the bakehouse, I'd love to know, because I remember I was a student in undergrad, not to reveal my age or anything, and I remember just walking into the space. It was very strange back then. There were no windows on the doors. It was a very dark place almost. The outside studios kind of looked like a chicken coop. It was not really cleaned up that well. It was like bakehouse, and it's like, I would call it the medium stage. And then I remember walking past the studio and seeing these like just beautiful organic shaped vases, and then I'm like, wow, I wonder who's, and it said your name, and it was your studio, and you're still here. And so I'm curious, when did your journey here at the bakehouse commence, and when did ceramics commence? So let's start with the bakehouse, and then just like your vessels and your forms.
I came to the bakehouse beginning of 2006, I believe, right after the graduate school, which ended in 2005. And there was one single studio, tiny and the darkest spot in the bakehouse, which was available. So I
was that upstairs or?
No, it was downstairs. Upstairs was actually pretty full at that time.
Oh, really?
Because it was one of two areas which were air conditioned, so it was popular. So the bakehouse was basically completely full, and it was only one vacancy. It was a studio which is now occupied by Eliza, I believe.
Oh, yes.
So it
underneath the staircase.
Exactly, underneath the staircase leading to upstairs, and it is the darkest spot. And I grudgingly took it because I just needed a place to work. But then when I spent a year in that studio, and I was having tours at the bakehouse. I would just throw something on the wheel, and it needed a little time to dry so I can proceed and keep going. And then I would pass by studios, and I would just dream which studio I would like to have. And there was only one studio, and I was very critical. I was very, very critical.
I see that in your work. You're very precise and exact. Yeah.
So there was only one studio actually which I really wanted to take, and it was a Studio 23, which was at the time occupied by a very good friend of mine, Beatrice Sager. She came here from the art center, and I said, if there will be room in the bakehouse and I need to move, this is the studio I would like to move to. And
you did?
It was just a year I spent in my dark spot.
Oh, wow.
And then this studio became available. It was more expensive, of course, than mine, but I said, it's just fate. I have
you
to be there.
Into the
and
universe.
I did not move ever since. I spent 11 years
wow,
in that studio,
amazing.
And I adore it.
Yeah,
it's a beautiful, beautiful spot. It has some light, but not too much light. It's really quiet. I adore the slanted ceiling. I love sky windows with a very soft light, and I need the light. I probably would not have survived in a studio which doesn't have a daylight for too long, because porcelain loves light, and it really limits me if I don't see daylight. So it had to be lit by the sun. So I got it.
We did a little bit of research, of course, before the interview, and we've also talked. I've been here also 2.5 years. We've talked in hallways, and I remember that you were actually born in the Ukraine. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct. I was born in Ukraine. My whole family was born in Ukraine. They actually came from the northern Galicia in Poland. This is where the whole family is coming from, and they settled in Ukraine, in this city which is called Zsitomir. So my father, my mom, all my sisters, everyone was born in the same city. But I spent there only 7 years.
And then the whole family moved?
Yes, my family had to move because my father was an officer in the army in former Soviet Union. So he was sent to very, very remote places usually, like Chukotka Peninsula and Kuril Islands. And when we were 7 years old with my sister, he was sent to so-called Zabaikalia, the area on the Chinese border, behind the very beautiful Baikal Lake. And this is where I spent, in Siberia. And this is where I spent wonderful, wonderful time, 5 years. We were there.
It's like Siberia is probably the farthest away from Miami, you know, in like the, you know, just like if you think about nature, we were talking about nature and the trees and everything. If, you know, just the word of Siberia is usually like, you know, you're getting a chill from just hearing that.
Picture, you know? Snow, yeah.
And how was that for you? I mean, the Ukraine is also not the hottest place on earth.
It's pretty cold too, isn't it?
It's pretty cold there. No, it's not too cold, right? But Siberia,
average, like Vermont, probably.
Yeah, for Floridian,
like
Miami,
Austria, probably.
Like Austria.
Like Austria,
exactly.
yeah.
Maybe a little bit colder.
Does it snow?
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah,
of course. It does, but
the
actually,
girl from Panama doesn't snow.
That's cold. Actually, in the area where we were living for 5 years, it snowed very rarely.
Oh wow!
Because it's a very, very specific climate. It's called continental climate, and the temperature in the winter would go up to 53 centigrade.
Okay.
Minus 53 centigrade, and the same would go for the summers. So the summers are excruciatingly hot, and the winters are very cold, and there is not much snow. It's very hilly, and there is very little plant life there. We never had fruits or vegetables there because it's just was not available. So
and that was in the Ukraine, right?
No.
Oh, that was in Siberia already.
Siberia already. Wow. Yes. I left Ukraine when we were 7 years old with my twin sister, my mom and my dad. Yes, the older sister. We have older sister who was sent to Moldavia to one of the grandmothers because she was already a teenager. And she needed to be in a good school, and my parents were not sure that the schools in such remote, tiny villages on the Chinese border would have proper schools for her.
Or offer what she needed, yeah.
Yes, so they just did not take her with us.
So they sent her to Moldavia? They
sent her to Moldavia for the 5 years we spent in. We barely spent time with my older sister in our childhood. So.
And how was that to live so close to the Chinese border?
It was very funny because it was the time when the relationship between Soviet Union and China was extremely strained, and China was under very, very strict communist rule of Mao Zedong. So there were many alarms on the border, but usually it was cows going back and forth. They do not know borders. Chinese cows would come here and our cows would wander in the Chinese territory. So there were just
rebels.
Yes.
Those cows. They were mad cows, literally.
I was like, cows?
Cows, yes. No accidents, as far as I remember.
But you were not allowed to on the other side.
No, we wouldn't go. But I've seen many Chinese people at the time in the city of Zabaikalsk. They were dressed the same way, men and women, in very gray uniform-like clothing, and they all had, according to my memory, they all had a little pockets on the left side of their chest with the portrait of Mao on it. So it was very funny to see for me as a child.
The costumes.
Yes, it's not a costume. This is what they wore. They were dressed the same way. All of them. Maybe they were clerks. I don't even remember who those people were, but it just really emphasized the sameness, the unity of them around some kind of a weird idea. They all were dressed the same way.
That's incredible. And do you feel, being how you were originally, like I think up to 7, you have some recollection or formation culturally and visually of like what it is to be in a certain place or country. So like you were in the Ukraine and then you're moved to Siberia. My question is, how did that affect you from age 7 to like more or less 12-ish, right?
Yes.
Culturally, like what changed, like scenic wise, what changed visual, artistically, like what impacted you the most being in Siberia from the Ukraine?
It was very different from Ukraine, and the population that I would not call it native population, but the population in that area was Cossacks who were sent away by Stalin.
Oh.
So the people who lived there in that area were not native to that area. So my father was in the military. It was a little village, and it was quite separate from the military garrison, they call it, with the families of the officers and their kids, right? And the local population was not native to that area, and it was quite wild and vicious. We went to school with the kids of natives, I would call them, and they were really wild. They came from the Don River, so it actually very close to Ukraine, but they were sent there by Stalin regime and lived there.
So they were all displaced people, basically.
They were all displaced people.
And they didn't want to be there. They were sent there.
I don't know. There were many generations since that time who grew up there already. So they were born there. The kids I went to school with were born already in that place, but their grandparents and parents were not native to that territory.
They were sent there.
They were sent there.
Well,
there is a word which doesn't come to my mind.
The word I'm thinking is military brat. Like, so you traveled from the Ukraine to
exactly. Within 10 years of schooling, I changed 7 schools. I had to go from school to school to school because my father was sent different places.
Wow.
Do you feel that process of starting fresh, hitting the ground running, just having to pick up and just basically acclimate yourself and adapt quickly and adjust, do you feel that happens in your practice? Because I mean, you're a ceramicist. I feel like it's a very repetitive, you're always starting fresh again. Like you're never, I'm done, and you're working on something for 6 months. Like I feel like ceramics and porcelain is so immediate and you just pick up. Do you relate those two at all? Or?
Well, I feel like it prepared me for future wanderings because I left home when I was 17 for the university, went to St. Petersburg, and then after 6 years of university, I worked in St. Petersburg, and then I left. I married a Hungarian musician and left to Hungary, and then from Hungary I left to United States. So it kind of prepared me since my childhood to the life of changing places and wanderings, and not growing roots basically anywhere, but kind of becoming the
vagabond.
Yes, we can call it that. I mean, you're just a tenant of the planet Earth. So, and this is what I would like. I wish I could live to the time when there will be no borders and countries, and I hope, maybe not in this life, but the next one. I certainly hope so. So this kind of prepared me probably for the wonders.
One question that I had in mind from the very beginning, you started mechanical engineering in St. Petersburg?
Yes, I did.
Tell us a little bit about that.
I really adored math in school, and I was pretty good at that. I had to be good. I was brought up this way.
Yeah.
My parents demanded and expected us to be excellent, so I complied. And I loved math and I loved physics, so from that perspective, I really wanted to keep studying in that direction where math and physics could be applied. But I did not want it to be purely theoretical. And I also had a math teacher in school who spoke about Marine Technical University in St. Petersburg. And he would have loved to study there. He adored this place. He wanted to build ships. And this was his dream, which never came true. And because I adored this teacher, I really wanted to kind of make an homage. And I applied for this school and I got in.
Wow.
So this is how it happened. It was more romantic to hear about it than to study there. It was mostly male-dominated university.
I can't imagine there were not a lot of women studying with you.
Yes, yes, there were very few girls, especially in the area where I was studying, which was automation of the engine of the ship.
Wow.
So this is what I did for 6 years. The study was interesting, but I actually realized that I never wanted to actually make those machines. I realized that I don't want to do it. It's a tough and not very very sophisticated life. And for years, because after completing the studies, I worked for 4 years as an electrical engineer. I was under the rule of 2 inventive males, and all they used me for is mechanical drawings of their ideas. So it was not very creative place to be. And I also always wanted to, I was very artistic. I used to draw, and I loved sewing, so I really started going more and more away from the idea. I just didn't want to be an engineer, especially the engineer and the arrangement I had for those 4 years. So math was more or less something of an art form for me. But when it was over and turned into a routine mechanical drawing of all kind of strange parts of turbines and engines, it did not attract me anymore. So I just really wanted to quit.
And there was no expression. It was very, like you said, mechanical, repetitive. And
it was quite mechanical.
Incredible.
I remember I loved math in school too. I loved it. I even did my final exam. Like when you finish high school, you can choose your subjects, and I chose to do like the mathematics, not just written but also oral. I loved it, and there is a creativity in solving those problems as well, right?
Beautiful.
I mean, it
was always fascinating for me.
It's so amazing. So it's actually not that far away, because so generally you think, either a kid is like artistic or it's like really good with mathematics, or it's kind of like how you divvy up kids. But I always felt like that's kind of like, that's not true. How you say like a left brain or right brain, or
it's not true.
It's not true, right? There's so much creativity also in math, and I was always fascinated by that too. But so I think it's very interesting that you also found a partner like your husband, who is very much a creative person as a musician, right? And then he kind of took you to Hungary, right? And then when did you start?
No, actually I left Soviet Union to go to reunite with my twin sister. I have a twin sister. And she left for Hungary 4 years before me. And we never stayed apart from each other for long periods of time. We are very close to each other. And I just needed to be somewhere close. So I moved to Hungary, and I met my husband already there.
Oh, that's how it worked. That's amazing.
I met my husband there in Hungary.
And how did it work that you moved to the United States and your twin sister is here too now?
My twin sister moved to United States first, 3 years before us. She came to the University of Miami to do PhD in chemistry. She is a professor of chemistry at Berry University, and she wanted to leave Hungary. She actually was married to Hungarian, as I said, before me, and her husband left. So she followed her husband, but her husband left as a tourist. He so-called defected to United States from Hungary, and she did not want to do that. She always wanted to be proper. It's our totalitarian regime upbringing, so she wanted to be proper. So she wanted to live legally. So she found this program at the University of Miami, which accepted her as PhD graduate student in chemistry, and she left. So 3 years later, I thought I have to leave. I have to leave because I need to be by my sister again. And also at the time, which was 89, the Eastern socialist countries were collapsing one after the other. So the regime changed in Hungary. So communist regime collapsed. And at that time in Hungary, I was working as a freelance interpreter and translator from Hungarian to Russian and backwards. So Hungarians were so jubilant to finally get rid of Russians that they did not want anything which was related to Russians in any possible way. So I did not have any work. It was just cut off. Exactly at the same time, my husband, who worked for Hungarian Academy as a scholar, Liszt and Bartók scholar, lost his job because they eliminated 19th century department from the Music Institute in Hungarian Academy. So all 7 people were just thrown on the street. So none of us had, neither him or myself had a job we can rely on, and we had a 4-month-old child.
Oh my God.
So we just really had this idea that we will find the possibility to leave. And my sister visited a music department at the University of Miami and found out that my husband could be a PhD student at the musicology department. So this is how we came to Miami.
Wow, what a story.
Yeah.
Incredible. With a baby, you moved from Hungary to Miami.
Straight to Miami. We got stuck.
That was not the plan to stay in Miami.
I don't know. We resented this climate. We kind of resented the not very cultural compared to Europe surroundings. So we just really heavily resented it for a good decade, I would say, until we just grew to love it. We made tremendous amount of friends, and our horizons expanded to include this city. So I really love it now. I enjoy being here, and it would be really painful for me to leave. To leave now.
So you feel like your life as a vagabond is over?
Like your roots are here now?
No, I don't feel this way.
You still have some moving in you, or?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I still feel this definite desire, and I heard from so many places that Miami is going to be place for mermaids, mostly sooner or later.
Water world.
Yes, water world. So.
And it seems more and more likely also with the hurricane
more and more
that
likely to be this way.
Yeah. So what city do you have in mind? Do you ever consider going back to Europe, or would you stay in the United States?
It's not easy to go to Europe, and I would not like to return to Hungary. I actually have a dream of going to the west part of the United States, and I would like to explore Hawaii.
Wow.
I've never been to Hawaii.
I have. It's beautiful, but it's an island. So things like volcanoes, I don't sleep well at night with. And then also like tsunamis, and you're on an island, you can't drive off anywhere. So there's different things, I guess, too. But the same weather. So I could see that's why you would love it, because it's tropical and hot and gorgeous with the ocean and palm trees.
Beautiful.
And it's as exotic as Miami.
And I think, like your bond with the nature and the vegetation there must be like amazing.
Exactly.
Right?
And all the worlds are there. There is beautiful ocean. It's mountainous in many parts,
and a lot of mountains.
And
because of volcanoes, which once again
mostly volcanoes. Yes. So you just get the messages from underworld as well. So I am really fascinated by the whole beauty of this place. It calls me.
I should go check it out for a bit.
Yes,
sure.
Yes. I have friends who live there part of the time, part of the year, for probably half of the year, and they said that they would like to invite us there.
Oh, so you haven't visited yet?
I have not. I already made a couple of pieces dedicated to the beauty of Hawaii.
Wow.
So, Hawaiian bowl. Yes, but I've never been there, and I must.
Let's discuss that. You just mentioned. I'm curious as to your process. Are you intuitive in that you commence a project not knowing what you're going to do, or do you normally start with an idea of the piece, an inspiration of a place, a feeling, and then you execute it? Can you talk to us a little bit about your process in making?
It is very closely related to my life experience as a wanderer. The most important form for me at the moment is a bowl, but being a server, being open, having a space to fill in, I really enjoy this form. But I used to make those forms with the very firm footing, so they were kind of glued to the space. So if you look at my work now, you will see that none of the bowls I make now have a stable footing. The bottoms are completely round and they rock. They move, and also a lot of them have cuts in them and folds. So they stopped being purely functional. They stopped being servants. They started being somewhat manifestations of my life experience and the ideas which are very important for me at this stage. So they all rock. They all move. They do not have a stable footing, and they have very, very inconspicuous color palette. It's white and gray and a little pink and very pale blues. So all the colors which I do see in nature and very much enjoy. There are no artificial bright colors. I try to have as inspiration for the colors of my work as rocks and shells and water and soil and plants. So they are very much related to
nature and your
to nature.
Yeah, I think I recall when I first saw them that they have a very soft, muted, but quite, the phrase I'm looking for is, when you look at them, they look fragile, but there's like, I don't know, it's like the fragility of nature almost. They look quite tender, like you want to touch it, but you're scared too. So could you talk a little bit about that balance between like the cuts and the roughness and the fact that they are infactable and they're supposed to be something that's handled with care?
They are very vulnerable, but porcelain is extremely high fired, so it's the highest fired out of all clays, and it's extremely refractory, and it came it's coming from the gas kiln, and it is a very, very drastic firing, which goes almost to 2400 Fahrenheit. There is tremendous pressure in the kiln. Porcelain softens in the fire and even deforms and occasionally slumps. So when it comes out from that incredible experience, it is like a song. It has a beautiful sound. This is the first thing I usually do to the balls which are coming from the kiln. I knock them a little bit. I don't know how it is called when you
flick it.
Yeah, I flick it, and they sound like bells.
Nice.
Yes, and the only ones which do not sound like beautiful bells are the ones which suffer some crack. If there is a little crack, they feel a little bit deaf. But if they came out from that insanity of the pressure and fire leaking them from all the sides, and if they survive that, they come out absolutely beautifully sounding and looking. So that's...
It's like almost a mystical, or the transformation. You know, when you talk about it, it's either like the firing is either that you're going through hell. You know, when you're going from like I'm brought up a Catholic, that's kind of like how, you know, that the flames are licking at you and stuff. That's hell, you know. And the other thing that I think about is when Hansel and Gretel put the witch in the oven,
yes,
and fired her. You know, it's kind of like, and then you're talking about, as a psychologist, you're talking about the transformation of the fire.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to share also an experience that I had, like running from the hurricane. I drove through the Mikosuki reservation.
This recent one?
The recent one, yeah, to get some gas there and get up north somehow, avoiding traffic. And there was this old Mikosuki Native American or Indian, or, you know, Mikosuki guy, and he said, yeah, you don't have to be scared. You don't have to be scared. A hurricane is just nature's way of cleaning itself. You know, it's like a repetitive. It's a cycle, and we go through that. You know, every now and so often, nature has to clean itself. But it's like also this sheer force of the wind. You know, this transformation, but also the fire in the kiln, like this huge, you know, transformation that happens in that moment, that is really like, also for me, it's also spiritual. Like that's
absolutely.
Probably, I don't know how you felt the hurricane, but also the hurricane, I feel like can be like a real spiritual experience as well. You know, if you're safe in a way. I don't know. Maybe if you're not safe, I don't know. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes,
what I'm talking?
It brings us closer to each other. It brings us closer to nature.
Yeah.
We start kind of physically feeling together.
Yeah.
So
being more aware of our surroundings.
Yes,
Yeah.
being aware of our surroundings, being immersed into them, just understand that all those structures and all this safety which we kind of build around ourselves, that it is actually an illusion.
Yeah.
And this is extremely important to get those moments when those structures are falling apart and you are staying basically naked together. So we kind of tend to separate ourselves from nature, and those events are bringing us back and telling us that we are together in that we are part of it, which we forget. With all the safety net we are building constantly around ourselves. And this place of vulnerability is extremely important. You have to go through it.
Yeah, and I feel that the material you use is such a vulnerable material, because you said it, like the slightest incorrect, whether it's an air pocket or a crack that occurs, then it's no longer that pure, beautiful structure that you once imagined and hoped it would be, with that beautiful ping once you flick it and creating that beautiful sound. So it itself is super vulnerable as well, the clay and the porcelain.
But I also like when they suffer. They suffer those cracks and they suffer transformation, because it brings them to the point of going through the suffering and through the transformation. I actually, a lot of the times, count on that happening. So I build the idea into the transformation which might occur. And sometimes it is coming more or less predictable way, and sometimes it comes completely unpredictable. So I feel like they have gone through the incredible suffering and emerged from it already knowing somehow more, because we all identify with the work we create. I mean, it's us.
Yeah.
And these experiences the work has add to the way they look. Don't know how to tell it better.
Yeah, and I feel like what you also described, your new series, that you already built the folds into them, or that they are not this perfectly shaped. A couple of your works are also these perfectly shaped,
pristine,
round, pristine globes, or how do you say that?
I call them orbs occasionally.
Yeah,
orbs, vessels.
But sometimes you started to already break that perfection, with the folds and with the, and you go already with before the firing, right? You go into them and kind of break them.
I do break
before
them.
The fire
I slice them. I open them up. I leave windows. I put some tenants inside the bowls. Some of them are not empty anymore, or there are bowls within the bowls, which kind of describes the relationship between people as well. So I call them entwine or embracing, so it's relational pieces. But then I count on the action from the kiln and the powers as well to co-create, to add something, because I know the vulnerable spots, and sometimes I know what's going to happen. Sometimes they just completely open up, not bearing the pressure of the flames of fire in the kiln, and they just open up and just collapse. And this collapse is so exciting sometimes and so incredible. And after initial rejection, I come to embrace it because I see something very new in that collaboration which happens after the firing. It's extremely exciting. And that's why I very much attach to this way of firing. I do not finish my work in electric kiln, because electric kiln is very still. Electric kiln is designed to have a complete control over the process. But with the firing, where you burn real fuel, nothing is actually set in stone. It is a real transformation which is going there. So as opposed to only heat emitted from the elements, there are forces which playing role in the gas or wood or oil firing kilns. And a lot of them are quite unpredictable and could be controlled to a degree, but not completely. So I really enjoy that process.
You enjoy that?
Of releasing partially control and having the kiln as your co-creator.
Well, it goes back to when you mentioned your experience in St. Petersburg. You were learning how to do these. You were doing mechanical drawings as a living, and it was repetitive, and you had no collaborative efforts. It wasn't creative at all. The expectation or the output and the result was always the same. It was always calculated. Versus when you're collaborating with the kiln, it's unexpected. You're not sure what might happen. It's exciting. It's creative. It's exploratory. So it's always something different. It's never the same.
Never.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. Okay, one last question. Okay, for me, before we ask you about the things you're doing, you mentioned your journey from, you said you used to draw. You also said you sewed a little bit, and then you went into, obviously, St. Petersburg. You learned how to do mechanical drawings and all this stuff, and then you ended up in clay and porcelain. Where did that...
How did it happen?
How did that happen?
When I moved to Hungary, I had to learn the language, and to learn the language, I started selling art books, and then a very interesting opportunity came up. I was invited to work at the National Puppet Theater in Budapest. And I worked in a so-called sculptural workshop, where they were sculpting puppet heads. It's marionette puppets which the theater worked with, which had heads, very sophisticated wood mechanics, which was done in a separate workshop, and there was a sewing workshop where they were sewing clothing. So originally I thought I would be working in the sewing clothing for puppets, but then I got into the shop where they were making puppets, actually the heads. So it's a very, very, very long process. It's paper mache, but it starts with clay heads. So you make heads for the puppets out of clay, and then you divide it in the middle, make a mold of 2 halves, and then you proceed with paper mache in 2 halves. Then you join them, then you cover it with, it's extremely, extremely long process. So this is where I touch clay first. And making puppets was extremely exciting and beautiful process, and I really enjoyed it. The only thing which I did not like, I had to adhere to the idea of the creator of the puppets so strictly that I was constantly deviating, and I was reprimanded for not
following the rules,
but not following the exact lines, for giving the face, when I painted it of the puppet, a slightly different expression, and so on and so forth. So I really wanted to create things myself, but it was the most wonderful job I ever held. It was absolutely beautiful. So I just had to leave this job because I gave birth to the child. But when I came to Florida, to answer your question, so
I love the journey. I love it. It's great.
So when I came to Florida, I wanted to make puppets. And I started looking for this possibility to continue on making marionette puppets, but I could not find it anywhere. And someone suggested clay, because it was so popular in Florida. It was in every school, in every university. It was just ubiquitous. It was everywhere. So I decided to try. And the moment I came to work to the wheel, I knew it's me.
It's meant to be.
Yeah, it's meant to be this way. So that's the connection.
Great. Well, I guess at this moment in time, do you have any upcoming projects you'd like to share with us? Maybe any trips you're going to be doing, or anything you'd like to say coming up in the future that you'd love to share with us and the listeners?
I would like to have a possibility for a solo show where all the ideas I'm just turning in my mind now would have a place to work out. And this is what I am working on now. I am trying to establish a very good connection to a gallery I have in my mind, and I have some indication that they might be open to the possibilities. So this is what I am entertaining in my mind and running ideas.
That's exciting. And if you want to visit Gerbi, put it onto the universe. Studio 23. She's here at the bakehouse.
At the bakehouse,
And she has some beautiful pieces that are always available. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming, Gerbi.
All right, so because you made it through the fire of this rocking chair, you actually get...
I didn't even rock. Well, I forgot.
Get 3 wishes from the rocking chair. You can wish for anything, and the rocking chair is going to make it happen for you.
Oh my.
So what are your 3 wishes?
Wow, this is an amazing question. I really would like to be able to, maybe I am, it doesn't have to be a wish. I would like to remember my dreams. I just would like to remember them, and I would like to be able to understand where they come from. So probably it's the desire to not limit yourself to the 3 dimensions of the world we exist in. So I would like to have a possibility to come and go in the world, which we visit every night, basically, but know not too much about it. I really would like to have this possibility.
Those are 3 pretty good wishes. Remembering your dreams, understanding what they mean and where they come from, and then being able to navigate back and forth.
I thought that was 1 wish.
I thought those were 3. I understood those as 3.
No, actually, I would like to fly as well.
I like Lauren.
I really
like Lauren.
I do flying a lot, or I used to do flying a lot in my dreams. Actually, as a kid, I was flying a lot.
I don't.
I can recommend.
Or I don't remember flying. I don't remember flying. So I really.
We hope you can.
Do want to have this possibility to fly.
That sounds wonderful.
So actually, the first can be considered 2.
Yes.
Because I not only would like to be able to remember those dreams, but I would like to be able to go back and forth. I would like to have an entrance to that world. So
there you go. Right. Those are some good wishes.
Wonderful.
Yay! Thank you so much for coming to visit us, Gerbi. Yes,
they're coming true now because the magical rocking chair makes it happen.
I really enjoy your chair.
Right?
The time went by so fast. Yeah, it always does.
All right, thank you so much, Gerbi.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Maria Teresa.
Thank you to all our listeners.
I know post Irma, hopefully you get your power back. I know there's still a lot of people in Miami and South Florida and Florida overall. And actually, you know what, in the Caribbean that don't have electricity right now. So
we hope you all were safe, and we hope you all keep safe for the possible next hurricane.
Yeah, Maria and then the system Lee. We'll see.
Maria, yeah. Alrighty, guys. Thank you, and
we'll see you next week.
See you next week. Thanks, Gerbi.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.